Are you struggling to maintain 120 plus FPS in Battlefield 6? Yeah, me too. The problem? Your CPU. And mine. So what do we need to do? Hey, this is Mr. MCP76 here, and today I'm going to find out what it takes to get the RX 7900 XTX to 120 plus FPS in Battlefield 6. This isn't going to be easy. The situation with the game is that it's extremely CPU intensive. The CPU I'm running is an Intel Core i7-13700KF, and believe it or not, that CPU is not quite enough to handle this game, it appears. So how are we going to address that? We don't want to put too much load on the CPU, or we're going to be bottlenecked and we're not going to get a lot of FPS. But when we're playing multiplayer, you're going to get a lot of CPU load. All those other players on screen and all the destruction they're causing, that's going to load up your CPU pretty heavily. And before you know it, you're going to be CPU bottlenecked and you just can't get to those high refresh rates. So the 7900 XTX alone should be able to get us there. But we need to keep the load on the GPU and not the CPU to give the CPU some headroom to load up all those enemy players and keep our FPS high. So let's take a look at these settings and see how we're going to handle this. So for graphics quality settings, we're actually going to keep everything on high, ultra, overkill. All those settings are going to remain as they are. The one setting we're going to lower is high fidelity objects amount. So why? All the other settings are either heavy on the GPU or heavy on the GPU and the CPU. We don't want to adjust those because again, we want to keep the load on the GPU. If we lower the quality settings for CPU high, we'll also end up lowering the GPU load, which unfortunately puts the pressure back on the CPU, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to only adjust high fidelity objects amount to low. This one setting in the game affects the CPU highly, but the GPU low. It's the only setting here in this game that works this way, so it's the only one I've reduced to low. Everything else again is either kept at ultra, high, or overkill. Basically the default overkill settings except for the very last one. The other thing we're going to adjust is the upscaling method. So the upscaling method, unfortunately, upscaling also is a pretty high CPU load. So we're going to start with performance and see what we get there. The higher or the more aggressive the upscaler, the more impactful it is on the CPU. So we'll see if performance here, is it too much? Can we back it off? Or are we just at the right spot? We're not going to enable frame generation just yet here. We'll see first what we get without it, and then we'll go ahead and see if doubling our FPS is even possible. So let's give it a try. All right, we are in Empire State here in multiplayer mode. FPS right now is just above 100. Looks like 130 even, 120. But we don't have a lot of enemies and other players on screen just yet, so let's see where it goes. Again, a lot of enemies on screen and other players, so we're hovering around 113 FPS average. GPU load is about 60%. This isn't said very often, but in games and in other areas as well, but definitely in games, your CPU is considered to be maxed out if you're at 50% or higher. Oh. Did anybody survive this? Save me? Anybody? All right, back in the game. So again, averaging about 113 right now, and this is with FSR performance. And we have basically left all settings at overkill, except for the very last setting, which we showed that we set that to low, right? So, and this is getting us into the hundreds. GPU is at about 97% load. Take him out? Oh. Oh, from behind. All right, so right now again about average 113 FPS. GPU load is about 87 to 88, or sorry, 97 to 98%, and the CPU is at above 50% utilization. Okay, we're back in the game here again, so let's go and reset the counter. So with performance, we were getting just below 120 FPS. We couldn't quite get there. So let's go and turn on frame generation. All right, I've turned frame generation on. Let's see how this plays. All right, so we're back in the game here with frame generation on, and we're just under 200 FPS. This is frame generation on an FSR3 performance mode. And again, we're still working with basically overkill settings here, but using just reduced one of the very last setting to low, as that was the only one that was high on the CPU but low on the GPU. Okay, where am I going? CPU utilization is sitting in the 60s. So we are CPU loaded still, CPU bottlenecked.
Objective Bravo is under attack.
Ooh. All right, so that's with frame generation on. So again, that was with frame generation, FSR3 performance, and only one of the settings reduced. So let's go ahead and make a quick change here before we join the map again. All right, we're going to change the graphics quality settings. So we're going to go through here and we're going to basically lower anything that is CPU intensive now. All right, so this is CPU high for FX quality. So we'll go ahead and reduce that to low. This one here as well, a local light and shadow quality is also high on the CPU, so we're going to reduce that to low as well. And by reducing some of these, we are also reducing the load on the GPU. So we'll see how that shifts the balance. Sun shadow quality, we'll go down that to low as well. All right, and that one's already set to low here for high fidelity objects amount. All right, so with these changes made, let's go ahead and see how that affects our performance. Before we were getting about 180 FPS, 184 FPS average. Okay, back in the game. And yeah, CPU. Now, CPU load has jumped up into the 70s, and our FPS is just below 200 average. So what happened? GPU load now is reduced quite a bit with these new settings in place. Again, we lowered all the CPU high settings to low, but this also reduced the load on our GPU. So the 7900 XTX now is about 96% utilized, and since it's not having really much of a hard time generating frames for us, it's put that load and shifted it back to the CPU. So now the CPU has 70% utilization, and I would guess that the CPU is the slower of the two components in this system, but right now we are averaging 200 FPS.
Our troops have retaken the objective.
Where be the enemies?
Defensive position is needed on the marked objective. Enemy attack is underway on Bravo. Be advised, Bravo has been lost.
We're going to take Bravo back.
Has been secured by hostiles.
Which way? I hear gunfire. Where's everybody at?
Attention, we are attempting to capture Bravo.
Yes, yes, yes. Battles this direction, guys.
We have eliminated half of their forces. Good work.
There they are. Oh. Okay, but we're averaging, well, right now the active FPS is 190. We're averaging 203. So we've hit 200 FPS with frame generation. All right, so again, just to reconfirm, this is FSR3 performance with frame generation, and the settings, we've adjusted only those settings which had an indicator on it that it was a high CPU utilization. So we've lowered all those settings down to low, and that is getting us into the 200 range. There is one thing I want to make clear though, which is frame generation is not, it's not causing an improvement in the performance of your GPU, right? So frame generation is not processing new frames from the GPU, which does mean that there is the possibility that frame generation could give you an inaccurate read of enemies on screen. Oh, where is he? Can't see anything. What just happened? Really? All right, so this is again, we're getting about just around 200 FPS here. Let's check the settings. What we're going to do now, we'll do one final test here, and what we're going to do is lower all settings to low. All right, so we're now at low for everything. We've lowered everything. Okay, we're back in the game. Okay, so now we are, well, poor GPU is hardly doing anything now. So now we are using frame generation, FSR3 performance, and we have set all settings to low. And we are averaging over 200 FPS. Let's get some enemies on screen and see how that changes before I die. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And yeah, not too long, huh? That was only one enemy on screen anyway. That's not enough. Come on, guys, now. Let's keep Bravo. Yeah, so we're comfortably sitting above 200 FPS now. And the game still looks great. If you stop and look at things, you're going to see a lot of shimmering, you're going to see a lot of flickering, but okay, this game is not, it's not about that, right? So if you're stopping to look at the trees, you're not playing this game right. Oh, it hit the wall, great. Maybe I should just not throw grenades anymore. Somebody on this side. Oh, they got him. Or maybe not. I thought you guys cleared it. Alright, so 205 FPS average here is what we were able to achieve with the 7900 XTX and the i7-13700KF. Again, to reach these FPS, we had to reduce settings to low completely. We had to use frame generation, and we are using FSR3 performance to get us to over 200. This is testing with 4K, by the way, so we'll test again here in 1440p and then 1080p to see how those perform. Let's go ahead and make those changes. Okay, back in settings here under display. We're going to go ahead now and switch over to 1440p. Alright, we are now playing at 1440p. Afterburner is massive on the side. They won without me. Okay, guys. There's a lot of players on screen. So we are back in the game now. We are now playing at 1440p resolution. Again, FSR 3 performance. And we are using all low settings and frame generation is on. And right now CPU to load is about 75%. GPU to load is all the way down into the 80s, 70s even. Pretty low.
Objective marked. We need you supporting the attack. Friendlies have secured objective Delta.
CPU's at 77%, so this is pretty heavy on the CPU, but we are averaging. It's kind of hard to see with all that HUD info down at the bottom there, but we're currently right now we're actually playing at 240.
All right, we've taken objective Alpha. We are targeting objective Bravo.
How about Echo? I'm closer to Echo. I hear gunfire. They must be on the other side. Oh. All right, but again, we're comfortably high in the 200s. So if you're playing on a 1440p monitor, setting everything to low, setting FSR 3 to performance, and enabling frame generation, you're going to get comfortably above 200 FPS many times. Right now, closer to 230, 229 averaging.
We are winning the fight. Keep it up.
All right.
Be advised, we need to run a defense of the marked objective. Objective Echo is under attack.
Is this like a prison cell or something? Jeez.
Hostiles are assaulting Charlie.
No, not Charlie. Again, we're about 230 FPS, averaging 227. His buddy saw me. Ah, I tried. Not the smartest thing to do to stand there like that, but it's fine. All right, let's go ahead and test now with 1080p. All right, so that was 1440p, and we were averaging well over 200 FPS, seeing go as high as 230, 240. So let's now go down to 1080p. Okay, so at 1080p, I had to go and turn off Afterburner. The Afterburner overlay was way too humongous, couldn't see the FPS. So we're going to go ahead and enable the built-in performance overlay here so we can see what our FPS is as we play. Okay, back in the map. Let's see if we can rejoin. All right, we are back in the game. Again, now we're playing at 1080p with the same settings again. That's performance, FSR 3 performance, frame generation on, and all settings set to low. We are currently seeing 260 FPS, 270, 280. This is at 1080p. So we're not going to crack. Not going to crack 400. We're not going to crack 300. This fight's this way.
We are targeting objective Bravo.
Oh, oh, oh. Oh, great. Can you give me a chance, buddy? Okay, back in the game again. Again, so right now we're seeing about 230 FPS at 1080p, going all the way up to 250, 254 right now. So definitely, there he is. Definitely an improvement, but I can tell you,
Move to attack the marked objective.
oh, great, now I gave myself away. Run away. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Couldn't see him. Oh, it's behind me. All right, so that's 1080p. All right, so the results of our tests here. 4K, we saw just above 200 FPS with those settings, and with 1440p, we were comfortably above 200, about 230, and then with 1080p, we're about 250, 260 FPS with those settings applied to 1080p resolution. So there you have it. To get over 120 FPS, we needed to definitely lower quite a few settings, well, all of them. If you're happy with 120 FPS, then you can actually get away with just reducing one of the settings, the very last setting in the game, and keeping everything out of the default overkill settings, and then enabling FSR3 performance and frame generation. All right, so I'm Mr. MCP76. If you like the content, go ahead and give it a like. That would be greatly appreciated. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video.